My name is Naomi Reyes. I'm 28 years old, and I own a small flower shop in a quiet Texas town where everybody knows everybody, and secrets never really stay secrets for long. 2 years ago, the man I loved got down on one knee right between 2 buckets of garden roses in the middle of my own shop and asked me to marry him, and I said yes before he even finished the sentence. We planned our wedding for October, at the same barn venue where I had personally arranged flowers for close to 100 other brides over the years. I paid for every single piece of it myself, every centerpiece, every deposit, every dollar, saved slowly from years of 5 a.m. flower markets and late nights wiring bouquets for weddings that weren't mine. Then, 3 weeks before my own wedding day, a gold foil envelope landed in my mailbox, an invitation to my little sister's surprise 16th birthday party at my venue on almost my exact date. When I opened my banking app that same afternoon with shaking hands, my wedding fund had exactly $26 left in it. If you've ever discovered the hard way that love in your own family came with a hidden price tag, stay with me until the very end, because what I did next didn't just change my wedding, it changed my entire family. Drop a comment saying flowers right now if you're already emotionally invested. And let's get into it. Let me take you back to the spring before any of this happened, back when everything still felt soft and hopeful. Back when I still believed my family and I were simply built differently, not against each other. My shop, Petal and Vine, sits on the corner of Main and 3rd in a small hill country town, the kind of place where the pharmacist remembers your allergies and the church ladies remember your business better than you do. I built that shop from absolutely nothing, working 2 jobs all through community college, because my parents made it very clear early on that college was something I would need to fund entirely on my own. Unlike, as it turned out later, almost everything my younger sister would ever need. My fiancé, Caleb, is a licensed electrician, calm, steady, and about as far from the noise of my family as a person can get. He proposed to me on one knee in my own walk-in cooler, surrounded by garden roses because he said, half joking and half completely serious, that it was the only place in the world he had ever seen me stand completely still. We picked a beautiful limestone barn venue about 20 minutes outside of town, the exact same one I had done flowers for every single fall for years. The coordinator, a woman named Marisol who had become something like a friend over the years, gave me the vendor discount and personally locked in a prime October Saturday for us. The full wedding package came to just under $12,000. I paid the deposit myself the very day we signed the contract, and set the remaining balance on autopay from a savings account I had opened years earlier as a teenager. An account that, because I had been a minor at the time, still legally had my mother's name attached to it as a co-owner. A small detail I hadn't thought twice about in years. You learn an enormous amount about a family simply by paying attention to where the applause always seems to land. My father, Marcus, is exactly the kind of man who sends the single largest flower arrangement to church every single Easter, tall enough that nobody in the entire congregation could possibly miss, whose name is printed on the little card attached to it. My mother, Denise, manages our family's public image the way some people manage an entire business, carefully, deliberately, and always with an audience in mind. Growing up, there was an invisible scoreboard running quietly between me and my younger sister, Lily, and somehow, without either of us ever agreeing to play, Lily was constantly winning a contest neither of us had signed up for in the first place. When I graduated from college, nobody from my family showed up. My father had a job site he simply couldn't leave that day, even though the ceremony had been scheduled for 8 months in advance. When Lily turned 13, our parents rented an actual bounce house for the entire block, hired a small taco truck, and my father stood on the porch with his arm around her shoulders, glass raised high in his signature toast. We go big for the people we love. Lily, 13 years old and visibly mortified in a glittery birthday sash she had never once asked to wear, slipped quietly away from her own party, found me leaning against the back fence and whispered, barely audible, "I hate this game." She wasn't talking about the party games happening a few feet away from us. Even then, at only 13 years old, my little sister already understood something I was only just beginning to understand myself, that we were never actually rivals in this family. We were 2 teammates who had somehow been entered into a contest that neither one of us had ever wanted to compete in. Every single Tuesday after school, without fail, Lily would walk into my shop, drop her backpack behind the counter, tie on my spare apron, and sit stripping thorns off long-stemmed roses while she talked, always in that quiet, careful voice she only used when the room finally felt safe. That fall, in the months leading up to her 16th birthday, she had exactly 3 simple wishes, and I heard all 3 of them repeated a dozen different times while we worked side by side, elbow deep in stems and leaves. She wanted driving lessons. She wanted a second-hand car, a little silver Corolla she had already been quietly pricing online for weeks, tracking the mileage and the listings like it was her full-time job. And she wanted a single weekend art class in the city, taught by an illustrator she followed online and admired more than any celebrity. Not once in any of those Tuesday afternoons did she mention a party, a stage, a crowd, or a single guest list. "That's the whole dream, honestly," she told me one particular afternoon, twisting a length of green stem wire around her finger while she spoke. "Pizza here at the shop, the good kind from that place downtown, and you letting me drive your truck around the empty church parking lot, just the 2 of us." Then she went quiet in that specific way she does right before something heavier is about to come out of her, picked at the wire in her hands and said, almost too soft to catch, "I told Mum and Dad straight out I never wanted—" And right at that exact moment, the shop bell jangled loudly as a bride's mother swept in with a dozen urgent opinions about baby's breath and centerpiece height. By the time that door swung shut again, Lily was already ringing up ribbon for another customer, and the rest of her sentence had folded itself quietly back inside her, like something she hadn't quite meant to let out in the first place. I meant to circle back and ask her to finish that thought. I never did. Meanwhile, completely unknown to either of us at the time, 3 weeks before my own wedding day, stacks of heavy gold foil invitations were already sitting sealed and sorted by street name on my mother's kitchen table across town, without me knowing a single thing about any of it. The first small crack in the silence didn't sound dramatic at all when it happened. It sounded like Marisol's usual cheerful voice on the phone, one ordinary Tuesday afternoon, while I was elbow deep in boxing up boutonnieres for a completely different bride's rehearsal dinner. "Hey, quick question on the Rays event," she said breezily. "Did you all want round tables or the long banquet rows? And the head count says 180, which, wow, big family." I actually laughed out loud and told her she must have pulled the wrong file by mistake. That mine was a wedding, 90 guests total, scheduled for October 17th. There was a pause on her end of the line, the specific kind of pause a florist learns to recognise immediately, the pause right before someone has to tell you the shipment arrived completely wrong. "Naomi," she said slowly, carefully, "your daddy came in last week, paid a cash deposit for a date in September. I just figured y'all were combining things somehow." Nobody in my entire family had said one single word to me about any event happening in September. I hung up the phone, stood there for a moment with a boutonniere still pinned between my fingers, and then opened my banking app right there on the shop counter, my thumb moving almost on its own. Through the front window at that exact moment, I watched our regular mail carrier push a thick, rubber-banded bundle of envelopes into my mailbox across the street. And right on top of that bundle sat the unmistakable corner of something gold, catching the afternoon sunlight like a wedding ring left in a pawnshop window. The banking app finished loading its little spinning wheel at the very same moment that gold envelope was already in my other hand. Balance $26, a single withdrawal of $9,400, dated 3 days earlier, authorised by the co-owner of record listed right there on the account. My mother. I drove straight to my parents' house that same evening, with the invitation sitting on the passenger seat beside me, like some kind of evidence bag from a crime scene. My father answered the front door, still wearing his good polo shirt, smiling wide, like I had simply stopped by to borrow a ladder or return a casserole dish. Inside, my mother sat comfortably on the sofa with a legal pad covered in party planning notes, dozens of napkin samples fanned out across the coffee table in Lily's favourite shade of lavender. I walked in, set the gold invitation down directly on top of all of it, and asked one single question. Where was my money? My father spread both hands wide in front of him, warm and completely unbothered, exactly like a man mid-toast at somebody else's celebration. Now hold on a second, sweetheart. That account was always considered a family account, you know that. Your sister only turned 16 once in her whole life. The wedding can always move to spring. You're young. You two have plenty of time. My mother never once looked up from her legal pad the entire time I stood there. You've always been able to take care of yourself just fine, she said flatly, almost bored. Lily needs this more than you do right now, I told them, my voice shaking slightly about Caleb's grandmother, about her failing heart, about the one single dance she had been hoping for at our wedding that might realistically not exist anymore by the time spring rolled around. My father waved the entire concern away with 2 fingers, the exact same gesture you'd use to flick a stray leaf off a car windshield. She's not even your family yet, technically. That's between you two to sort out. And there it was, laid bare in one single careless sentence, the entire operating philosophy of my family. Love, carefully ranked and rationed out, always flowing toward whoever in the room happened to be least likely to argue back that day. That Thursday night, close to midnight, my phone lit up on my nightstand with a text from Lily, and I could tell instantly from the broken, rushed way she was typing that something had cracked wide open on her end too. She had found out everything, straight from a classmate at school whose own mother had been openly bragging about receiving the invitation, about the professional drone videographer, about the light-up LED stage being rented, and about the one particular detail that had apparently made it the juiciest piece of gossip in the entire school hallway that week, that the whole extravagant thing was somehow sitting on her older sister's wedding money. Lily told me, in fragmented texts and then later in a full, painful phone call, that she had gone straight home that evening and genuinely begged our parents to cancel the entire party, told them clearly that she had never once wanted a big celebration, that she would honestly rather skip her own birthday completely than walk out onto a rented stage in front of 180 adults she barely knew. Our mother, standing calmly at the stove stirring dinner like nothing important was happening, told her flatly that the invitations had already gone out to the entire town, that she needed to immediately stop being so ungrateful, and delivered the sentence Lily would repeat back to me, word for word, months later. You will stand on that stage and you will smile so pretty. Not smile because you love it. Not give it a real chance, smile so pretty. Lily called me properly at midnight from inside her locked bathroom, fan running loudly to cover the sound, 15 years old and whispering so our parents down the hall wouldn't hear her crying. She asked me for exactly one single thing that night, and it wasn't to stop the party. She already understood by then that battle was completely lost. She simply asked me to come, so that at least one single person in that entire crowded barn would actually be looking at her, and not at the show being performed around her. I didn't go as an invited guest that night. I couldn't physically bring myself to sit at a rented table eating cake that had been paid for with my own stolen wedding money. But there was exactly one thing I could still give my sister that belonged completely to her and to nobody else in that entire barn. White ranunculus. The exact flowers she had called cloud roses, as a little girl the very first time she saw a bucket of them in my walk-in cooler, and refused to believe something so perfect could possibly be real. I cut 60 fresh stems myself at dawn that morning, delivered them personally to the venue before the party officially began, no charge to anyone. I found Lily hiding up in the loft above the barn, knees pulled tight against her chest, quietly practicing how to look properly surprised. Because our mother had genuinely written out detailed stage directions for her to follow, I climbed up, sat beside her on a stack of folding chairs, tucked a single white stem behind her ear, and told her the only true thing I actually knew for certain that day. Flowers don't bloom for an audience. Later that evening, in front of all 180 guests, my father took the stage and delivered his signature toast, glass raised high exactly like always. We go big for the people we love. Lily smiled through the entire thing, a smile so carefully practiced it never once reached her eyes, not even for a second. Then, during the elaborate grand entrance my mother had personally choreographed for herself, descending a lit acrylic staircase while waving enthusiastically at the crowd instead of watching her own footing, she missed a step near the bottom, fell hard off the open edge, and broke her ankle in front of every single guest in that room. The party that was supposed to be the shining highlight reel of my parents' entire year ended instead with flashing ambulance lights against a barn full of white flowers. In the exhausting days that followed, the true math of everything finally, fully came together for me. Once the medical bills for my mother's ankle surgery were added on top of everything else, the party had ultimately cost well over $20,000 total, $9,400 of which had come directly and secretly from my own personal account. With the remaining balance financed hastily across 2 brand new credit cards my parents had quietly opened that same August without telling anyone. When I sat down one evening, and pulled every single one of my old account records going back years. A clear and troubling pattern slowly emerged. Money had been quietly, methodically withdrawn from my account, right before nearly every big public gesture my father had ever made over the years. A generous fundraiser donation here, an expensive Christmas gift there, every single warm, generous moment in my family's public story secretly funded by me, entirely without my knowledge, for well over a decade. And it wasn't only my own money that had been quietly taken either. Lily's own personal savings account, the modest one meant specifically for her future car and her art class, had also been steadily drained over roughly 2 years in small, careful little withdrawals, $80 taken here, $300 taken there, until barely $200 remained of the full $3,000 she had personally earned through babysitting and lifeguarding shifts. That same night, Lily called me one final time, her voice completely broken. "I'm packing a bag right now," she said. "Come get me, or I swear I'm walking there myself." I drove over immediately, and for the very first time in either of our lives, nobody in that house even attempted to stop us at the front door as we left together. What followed over the next several months was a long, exhausting stretch of pressure, guilt trips delivered through relatives, a genuinely threatened runaway report, and finally, once Lily turned 16, a formal legal filing for her to become self-supporting, moving in permanently above my own shop and paying me $40 a month in rent, carefully underlined twice on a handwritten note she left on my kitchen counter. My parents eventually offered me a deal through their attorney, sign away any legal claim to the missing money entirely, agree to stay completely quiet about the account records I had uncovered, and in exchange, they would consent to Lily's petition without dragging it through months of contested court hearings. I took that deal without hesitation, not because of the money itself, which was already long gone anyway, spent on fog machines and drone footage that could never come back, but entirely for my sister's freedom, which was worth infinitely more to me than any refund could ever be. In the courthouse hallway on the morning, everything was finally signed. My father made one final attempt, promising loudly to throw me an even bigger, better wedding the following year, still fully convinced even then that all of it had somehow always been a genuine gift and never once a performance staged at my expense. I told him the only thing I had left to say to him. "I don't want your wedding, Dad. I just want your signature," he signed. 6 months later, on a quiet Saturday morning, I married Caleb in the small garden behind my own shop. 22 folding chairs total, no stage, no drone, no rented lights. Just people who had genuinely shown up to actually look at me. Lily stood up and gave the toast herself, her hands visibly shaking, her voice finally full and steady for what felt like the very first time in her whole life.